a coach that was fired in the Big Apple after blowing a 17-7 lead. I had the Bears bet in this game, and I thought my bet was in trouble because it was minus 3.5. And all of a sudden, Jackson Dart goes down from a knee to the head, and Russell Wilson comes in, and it's the end of the Giants as we know it, and it's the end of the Brian Daboll era as we know it.
Yes.
What?
I think the Giants, if I'm not mistaken, have blown 4 double-digit leads this season. 4 of them.
For sure, Chicago and Denver. I don't know the other two. Maybe Dallas. I think Dallas was one of them in week 2. Yeah, they had a 23 lead.
I think you're right.
There was one more that I think you're right on that I can't recall at the top of my head.
But it's not just the 4 double-digit blown leads for me. It's the fact that Jackson Dart, after being evaluated for concussion, that was his 4th time being evaluated for a concussion this season.
He's got to learn how to slide. I mean, that's coaching, but also I'm not going to put that on Daboll because some guys like Robert Griffin III just don't learn how to slide.
And that's totally fair. I understand your point there. But for me, it's more about Daboll. You got it. If it's your quarterback's instinctiveness or instinct rather to just run like a bull through a china shop.
Well, also he has no choice because he does not have Malik Neighbors. He does not have Cam Scatterbo. Nobody else in that offense at this point in time now is a playmaker. I said when Cam Scatterbo went down, I said, that's it. Their season's over. They're not going to win another game. They might win one because they don't have any more playmakers. And Dart is literally their only playmaker that they have. So he's thinking to himself, I got to get every single possible yard I can because, one, my defense is not the defense of Denver or the Rams or Philly or Kansas City where they're not getting consistent stops. So I got to go make a play.
Okay. Did you hear what Dan Orlovsky said during Monday Night Countdown yesterday?
I did not know.
He said that if he were the New York Giants, depending on what happens in Cleveland, I would go after Kevin Stefanski.
Now, that's interesting. Here's the name I was going to bring up for the Giants, and it's the same name I brought up for the Browns a couple times that I don't know if anybody's brought up yet. Obviously, the name out there that I'm not going to bring up, but that people have brought up is Lane Kiffin. And I don't think it's going to be Lane Kiffin because I don't think Lane Kiffin would leave for the NFL. I think if anything, if Lane Kiffin is leaving Ole Miss, I think he'd leave for Baton Rouge. So the name that I think the Giants should go out and hire is a man who, back in the day for this team, when their head coach was Bill Parcells and they won 2 Super Bowls as their defensive coordinator, is the current head coach at North Carolina. And his name obviously is Bill Belichick. I think if you convince Bill to work with Joe Shane, Bill has a lot of respect for the Giants organization. Bill would get to essentially pick his quarterback in Jackson Dart, and then Bill could work with the defense and get the defense up to speed, no problem. But the problem at the end of New England was he didn't have a quarterback. If you think Jackson Dart is your quarterback, I think Bill would have no problem going back to an organization that he clearly respects. As a matter of fact, I think he was disappointed a year ago that Daboll was not fired because I think he wanted the Giants job and it wasn't open.
Are you surprised that the Giants only fired Daboll but kept Joe Shane?
The interest, I'm surprised at the wording. And what I mean by that is their wording was Joe Shane has built a great roster. The Joe Shane who let Saquon Barkley walk out the door to pay Daniel Jones. And then they got Daniel Jones killed and they couldn't afford Daniel Jones anymore. So Daniel Jones goes up to the Colts and was having an MVP season at one point.
Well, Daniel Jones made a quick stop in Minnesota before going to the Colts, just for clarification.
Yes, but he never played for the Vikings.
No, But I will say, I think being in the Vikings organization greatly helped him before going to the Colts because he got.
That's fair. I thought they did have a good draft. Obviously, Cam Scatterboo, I think, is a good pick. Andrew Thomas was a good pick. You have Malik Neighbors in these recent couple drafts
I
that have
like
been good picks.
Abdul Carter that came
I
from
like
here.
Abdul Carter. He hasn't had the impact that I thought he would have. So for the Giants, I just think like you need to go get Brian Jackson Dart more weapons. I don't think Daboll was the problem. I think Daboll can actually coach, and I think there is a landing spot for Brian Daboll if he wants it potentially that could open up.
It would not surprise me if he ends up being an offensive coordinator again somewhere.
Well, I'll tell you this: I will not be surprised next year if Brian Daboll is coaching a certain NFL team.
Okay. Interesting. But you look at the Giants, and overall, I like their defense with Abdul Carter. Brian Burns is there. Kayvon Thibodeau. They can get after the quarterback. But once you get past the D line, there's not a lot there for the Giants. So,
yeah, I mean, you know what this sort of felt like to me? This sort of feels like the Baker Mayfield situation when he entered in Cleveland, right? He's on a 2-win football team that's got a little bit of momentum with Hugh Jackson. They lose a couple games. You're like, the defense is good, but then the coach gets fired, and then he has to start all over next year. So it really depends on who the Giants bring in. I think they should bring in an offensive head coach. I hope they get the coaching hire wrong. I'm not rooting for Jackson Dart to succeed because I'm an Eagles fan, but I'm not rooting for him to get killed either.
Yeah, I understand. Do you remember when they hired Joe Judge to be their offense or their head coach? Good.
How about Ben McAdoo, Pat Shermer, Joe Judge, and Brian Daboll? I have said for years, Josh, don't know if I've said it much on this show, but I have said for years, the Giants are the Browns of the NFC. And I thought the last couple of years, the Giants are worse than the Browns.
So let's say, hypothetically, that the Cleveland Browns do fire Kevin Stefanski. Which do you think is the more desirable job, the Giants or the Browns?
Oh, God. Well, it's close. I think it's the Giants for one reason. And I don't think it has to do with any of each other's roster. I think it's the Giants because they're in the NFC. And I know you have Philly there that you got to go up against. But in the AFC, you got to go up against Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Lamar, Joe Burrow when he's healthy, etc. In the NFC, yes, there's Matthew Stafford, but he's getting older. Yes, there's Jalen Hurts in that Eagles roster, but even as an Eagles fan, I don't think they're going to be the Chiefs. I don't think that they're going to make the Super Bowl every single year. Yeah, you got the Lions, but Goff is also an older quarterback. There are, I think, more questions in the NFC than there are in the AFC, even though I think the NFC at the top, at least this year, is stronger.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. But it's not for the reason you mentioned, though I don't disagree with your reasoning about the NFC being like the weaker conference compared to the AFC.
I think this year it's actually stronger, but if I'm looking at a job, I think I'd rather take my chances in the NFC than the AFC when it comes to the playoffs.
So when I say the NFC is the weaker conference, I mean in terms of specifically quarterbacks. Because you mentioned it, in the AFC, you got Mahomes.
At the top, yes. I think the NFC actually has more talent at the bottom than the AFC.
That part I agree with you. But the reason I would go with the Giants instead of the Browns is because the Giants are a family-run organization with the Maras and I believe the Tishes, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right on that.
Whereas I don't trust Jimmy Haslam to run the Browns. No way. Like, he, think about some of the moves the Browns have made. It feels like it's Jimmy Haslam trading Baker, trading for number 4, drafting Shador. It all smells like Jimmy Haslam, and that the Browns organization just reeks of instability.
All right, Josh, we may not agree on this next topic. Are the Bills, after getting absolutely annihilated by the Miami, I mean, this thing wasn't even close. The Dolphins obliterated the Bills in their own building down in Miami. The question on the screen is, are they contenders or pretenders? And let me clarify for the audience before you go. What we mean by this is, are the Buffalo Bills still premier Super Bowl contenders?
And the answer for that, well, here's the interesting thing. Buffalo had won 7 straight against Miami coming into this game, which includes a 31-21 victory back in week 3 on Thursday Night Football in Buffalo. The last time the Dolphins beat the Bills was in week 3 of the 2022 season in Miami. That was the game. It ended like 21-19 with the weird shadows and all that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But I mean, Miami's always played Buffalo tough, though, even in Buffalo.
That part is true, yes. But, and I said this to you, and I think this is part of the reason you put this question as a topic. If you take Josh Allen off of the Buffalo Bills, they're the same team as the Cleveland Browns in that regard. That's how valuable Josh Allen is to the Buffalo Bills.
And I think at the trade deadline, it was telling that Brandon Beane admitted they wanted to trade within the division and get Jalen Waddle from the Miami Dolphins, and Buffalo offered a 2027 first. Sounds like Miami wanted the 2026 first. I'm shocked Miami even entertained it in the same division. But to me, the fact that Buffalo was trying to go out and get that wide receiver tells me that they feel like they don't have enough. And now this Dalton Kincaid injury is going to change things too if he's out for a significant amount of time.
And with all that being said, I believe the Buffalo Bills window is closed.
Wow, wait, you're not saying it's closing. You are saying currently today they have no shot to win the Super Bowl. It's closed.
Closed. I think they are pretenders. And the old empire is back. Not only do I think the New England Patriots are going to win that division, but the road to Super Bowl 60 at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California, is going to run through Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I'm being completely honest with you. If you were to tell me right now what the AFC Championship game is going to be, I think most people would probably tell you it's going to be Kansas City going to New England.
Yes. So for me, because the Buffalo Bills didn't do anything at the trade deadline, and given how much they depend on Josh Allen to be Superman, I have to say they're pretenders.
So here's where I'm at on this. History usually tells us that quarterbacks in their first or second year without a great roster around them, because I still don't think New England's roster is great. Let me clarify that. I think they are a year ahead of schedule. I think that there are holes in that roster still, particularly on the offensive line and at the skill position group, receiver and tight end. I like Hunter Henry, but I don't think he's a world beater. I do think Travion Henderson finally breaking out and me leaving him on the bench in fantasy football this week.
That's how I felt leaving Matthew Stafford on the bench in favor of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. So I think that breakout helps them. I think that was a very impressive win. Going down to Tampa, I was so impressed. Even though the Bucks are banged up, I thought Todd Bowles and that blitzing style would get after Drake May. I thought New England would struggle on the road.
Here's
With
my one concern with New England coming this
Well, hold on.
offseason.
Well,
Go
let me
ahead.
see if it's the same concern I have about them.
Okay.
That is, do you know Drake May leads the league in sacks this year?
Okay, so it's not the same concern.
Okay. That's my concern. Is I think Drake May is going to end up getting hurt. They do not protect him. He's putting up great numbers, and they do this great job in the second half of really adjusting. And Drake's been great in the completion percentage department. But him and Justin Herbert are getting hit more than Cam Ward. I didn't think that was possible with how much Cam Ward was getting hit.
So I agree with you, but my concern is the fact that Stephon Diggs is only on a 1-year contract. So if they don't re-sign Stephon Diggs, where are they going to find another top target for Drake May?
It's called the draft. We know look at Emeka Buka this year. They found him at what, pick 18?
Yeah. So that's my concern though for the Patriots is, do they have enough weapons around Drake May, and what happens if they're not able to re-sign, Stephon Diggs? But to get back to the Buffalo Bills, it's interesting. It's almost like they treat the Kansas City game like it's their Super Bowl.
They do. And as I said last week to you, the Chiefs are the Warriors and the Buffalo Bills are the Houston Rockets. Where the Rockets were so obsessed with beating Golden State, right? They did all these analytics. They went to the James Harden, the point guard, and the no center lineup because we're going to beat Golden State with all these threes. And then they don't beat Golden State, and look what happens to them.
Yep.
I think the same thing. I think Buffalo is obsessed with Kansas City. And I think
about this. And we talked about this last week. They made all these moves in the offseason for one reason.
Yep.
Just to beat Kansas City. And you did that last week. But what happened when you went down to Miami and took on a very dysfunctional Dolphins team that fired their general manager in Chris Greer? They're going to keep Mike McDaniel as their head coach for the rest of the season, which I still don't understand. They trade Jalen Phillips. Everybody thought they were going to trade Jalen Waddle and some of their other pieces.
Maybe Minka Fitzpatrick. I know he was being dangled at the deadline.
Yeah. And you come out flat. I don't want to say flat as a pancake because that's what the Packers were.
Well, there are rumors going around that Josh Allen had the flu. He certainly did play like it. He was completely off the whole game. Who knows if that's true or not? But this is the one thing I wanted to bring up. The last topic we talked about Brian Daboll. Before Brian Daboll got the job with the Giants, he was the offensive coordinator of this team, the Buffalo Bills. And before he got that job with the Giants, I think it was right before we started our championship ring show. It was going into that season. And I had said, if I was the Bills at that point in time, I would not have let Daboll left the building. I would have actually let Sean McDermott go, and I would have promoted Brian Daboll to the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. I like Sean McDermott. I think he's a very good coach. I think he's a great culture setter. If the Browns were to fire Kevin Stefanski and McDermott came here, I would absolutely love it. The problem is, I think Sean McDermott is sort of like a Mark Jackson or a J.B. Bickerstaff of the NFL, which is where he can get you wins. You can win divisions. You can be a really good team. But he's just not the guy that's going to get you over the top into the promised land. And I think it's very interesting if Daboll's job is available and Buffalo does flame out early in these playoffs, is Josh Allen going to say, go get me that guy?
I hadn't even thought about that as a possibility. But it's so interesting when you look at the state of the AFC. You got the Patriots, the Broncos, and the Colts as the top three in the AFC.
Just like we all predicted coming into the year.
Yes. And I think Baltimore is a freight train coming right down the tracks. They're going to destroy the Browns on Sunday. Lamar is going to have a field day.
Don't be so sure.
I am not going to be at that game on Sunday. Due to personal reasons, I will not be going to any more Cleveland Browns games this season, and we'll see moving forward. But I'm not going to speak any more on that. That is personal to me. But you got the Steelers faltering. Baltimore's coming. And you got the Chargers and the Chiefs along with the Broncos. And I thought Houston was dead and buried, but now they're back at 500.
A 19-point comeback in the fourth quarter by Davis Mills.
Yes. So is there a possibility where somehow, some way, the Buffalo Bills miss the playoffs?
If they lose to Tampa this week, it's a possibility.
Which I know the Buccaneers are banged up, but I wouldn't put it past Baker Mayfield to pull off a road win in Buffalo.